today. Thank you for being here. This conversation that we're going to be hosting today is going to be in English. So firstly, I'm just going to introduce it quickly in Spanish. Just to let everybody know, there is live translation available from English to Spanish, and you can find that by clicking on the globe icon at the bottom of the screen. Hola a todas y todas, como estaba diciendo en inglés, la conversación de hoy va a ser en inglés, ya que tenemos a varias invitadas que hablan inglés. Somos conscientes de que nuestros eventos suelen ser en español y que la mayoría seguramente hablen español, y por ello tenemos traducción disponible en vivo al español. La pueden encontrar dándole al botón en forma de globo abajo de la pantalla. Contamos con Josué, que va a estar interpretando la charla de hoy y que ha colaborado previamente con Acápacá y con el foro permanente. Entonces, bueno, lo dicho, tienen el globo ahí abajo y eso les debería permitir escuchar toda la charla en español. Lo hacemos también pues por promover un poco la diversidad de voces y perspectivas que están presentes en todo el sector de la cooperación, y bueno, es por ello que hemos decidido esta vez convocar la charla en inglés. Si necesitan cualquier ayuda o apoyo con el acceso a la interpretación, pueden mandar un mensaje a Claudia Caselli, que está en la llamada de Acápacá, y pues ella les puede ayudar con eso también. Em, So we wanted to give a warm welcome to everyone to this discussion that we're organizing today. At Acápacá, we're a platform of social movements and academia from Latin America, and we drive forward these agendas to transform cooperation. We work alongside with, collaborate, and coordinate with a range of regional and global actors to drive change in the aid system and build a more equitable, decolonial, and feminist ecosystem where leadership from the global south can drive systemic change. The idea behind this webinar series, which is the first of a few webinars that we'll be hosting, is to promote a series of dialogues about the future of cooperation, the new actors that are emerging, and how an alternative to traditional cooperation is being built currently. So as we navigate the current reshaping of the international order, we really want to engage in dialogue with sort of key players in the system. Today's conversation specifically will center around the role of NGO networks in defining and determining the future of the international cooperation system. We want to question how regional NGO networks in Europe, in this case, are currently responding to these shifts in the international cooperation sector. And we want to hold a conversation regarding, on the one hand, the role that NGOs should play in the future cooperation system, as well as what should be the role of NGO networks in influencing and advocating for the cooperation sector. This is really important right now at a time when we're seeing multilateralism and solidarity are being threatened. For us, it was very important to highlight the importance of NGO networks in advocating specifically for civil society, human rights, and equitable cooperation. And this is what we want to center the conversation around today. So we have with us today representatives from three of the most important NGO networks globally. We have La Coordinadora de ONGs in Spain, Coordinación Sud in France, and Bond in the UK. And together they represent more than 500 NGOs and civil society organizations. So we're very happy to have these speakers with us today. I'm going to start off just by introducing them, and then the idea is to have a casual conversation around some of the most pressing issues regarding the future of cooperation. And then we'll also be holding some time at the end, around 15 minutes, for any questions from the audience. So I want to introduce first Sandra Ferrer. She's the director of La Coordinadora de Organizaciones para el Desarrollo in Spain. She holds a degree in translation and interpreting, has studied political science, has completed postgraduate studies in development cooperation, and holds a master's degree in Middle Eastern politics. She also has over 15 years experience in humanitarian work, development cooperation, and international relations. So just a bit about the Coordinadora, for those of you that are not familiar. It was founded in 1986, and it's the national network of organizations and social platforms working in the fields of development, international solidarity, humanitarian action, education, peace, and the defense of human rights worldwide. It comprises 77 member organizations, 7 affiliated organizations, and 17 regional coordinating bodies, and brings together more than 600 organizations. We also have with us Jérôme Fauré from Coordinación Sud. Jérôme is the executive director, and he has over 30 years of experience working in the international development sector, especially in Latin America. Coordinación Sud is the national coordinating body of French NGOs working for international solidarity. It currently comprises 184 NGOs, either as direct members or through networks of associations. And they work in the fields of emergency humanitarian and development aid, environmental protection, human rights, advocacy and global citizenship, education for international solidarity. And finally, we have Zoe Abrahamson from Bond UK. Zoe is Bond's head of sector transformation, and so she leads Bond's work transforming the UK international development sector. This challenges the sector to reflect on how it operates to decolonize development so that it is transformed to a more equitable and fair system, putting power into the hands of the communities. Bond is the UK network for organizations working in international development. It was founded in 1993 and it has 61 members, which now unite over 330 organizations. And yeah, so they work across the international development and the humanitarian sector to drive global change. So once again, thank you to the three of you for taking the time to be with us today. We're sure that it's going to be a very fruitful and interesting conversation for everyone. We want to make sure that it's a casual and dynamic conversation, so we won't be establishing sort of any fixed turns to speak. Feel free to speak up and respond to each other's points if you wish. We wanted to kick off by thinking about the current moment, the reshaping of the international cooperation system, and how we've seen in recent times civil society organizations and movements from the global south have been demanding changes to the cooperation sector in terms of power redistribution, horizontal partnerships, flexible access to funding, locally led decision making, and shared responsibility and accountability. And so we wanted to ask you quite directly, what are NGO networks doing, or what are each of your NGO networks doing to influence and advocate for these demands of civil society across the global south? So as I said, we don't have any particular order. If any of the three of you would like to start us off, thinking about how NGO networks are responding to these demands from the global south in the reshaping of the international development sector. Yes, Zoe, go ahead.
I can talk a little bit about what we're doing here at Bond. So we've definitely been working in this area for a number of years, ever since I've been at Bond, which is coming up to 10 years, which is quite scary. But I'd say over the last 5 years, and definitely since, the massive cuts to overseas development aid over the last year or so, we've really stepped it up, and we're seeing more of a push and momentum from not just our members, but from everything in the external environment is pushing us to change. What are we doing? We've been working to sort of like a lot of the work that I do around sector transformation. We're working with our members, the INGOs themselves, to support them in their transitions. So we have a project that we kicked off at the end of last year around the future of the INGO. What is the INGO of the future going to look like? And how can we, as a network, really challenge our members, support them, be that critical friend, to let them know, this is difficult for them. They're in a situation where they know things need to change, but often they don't know how to do that. And we create the spaces, the non-judgmental spaces often, for them to have those conversations and to talk honestly in those spaces. And what we really try and do is we really try and inspire wherever you sit in your organization, whether you're a CEO, senior leadership, or someone that works in the organization, you are a change maker. And so while you may not feel like you have any power, and often we hear from our members, oh, well, we can't change because the funders won't change, or we can't change because whatever the reason is, we want to inspire our members to let them know that everything is incremental and everything contributes to this transformation that we want to see. So we do a lot of work in this area, and we'll be doing more work kind of to help UK-based organisations really consider what they want to be in the future, and how instead of sleepwalking into a future that we don't want, they're more proactive and they're thinking strategically and more purposefully about the future of their organisations and the sectors that they work in. So that's a big piece for us. And then I'd say, secondly, what we're trying to do, and I think we'll probably come to this later, is we're trying to make sure that when we're doing our advocacy with UK government and all our developing our policy, ask that we're being more inclusive, that we're bringing in voices and opening doors, giving up spaces, so that we're not representing, but we're giving a chair, so to speak, and using our access to make sure that there are more diverse opinions and that the conversations that affect people, those people are in the room. So I think that's a real role for kind of us encouraging our members to do the same as well.
That's great. Thank you so much. Sandra?
Yeah, thanks, Alba and Zoe. I could say from La Coordinadora, we're doing pretty much something similar to what Bon is doing. We have we approved last year our strategic framework for 5 years, and within this framework, we have already, guiding perspectives or approaches, including this decolonial, anti-racist, intersectional, feminist approach to our actions and activities, and it permeates, it covers, all the actions that we're planning for the coming years. So we are trying to first do this reflection with ourselves, change our ways of doing things. Actually, we have just approved last year a feminist policy that is focused both on the work of La Coordinadora and also on guiding and supporting our members in this process of becoming, of also integrating this feminist perspective, intersectional perspective, and the colonial perspective in the way they work. So we are trying to reflect with them, to work together in order to change, and the change is difficult, and it's particularly difficult in these times of restrictions of funding, where there is this temptation of going back to old models of cooperations, or not so old, but that we would like to be old models of cooperation, but still we understand this is the way we have to go forward, and organizations are going with us in this way. Also, as Zoe was mentioning, we're trying to make as much as possible to push to advocate for these global South actors to be part of the decision-making ecosystem here in Spain. I was thinking before starting the session that we were pretty successful in Spain. We had a reform of the cooperation system with a new cooperation law that was approved in 2023. And it was very successful in terms of civil society participation and the organizations in the reshaping, the remodeling of the system, of the law, of the institutions, instances. However, we didn't manage to include the direct actors from the global South in these discussions, in these processes. So this is still a challenge, and we are trying to push for that. We're being a little bit more successful in the recent times with regards to the situation in Palestine, for example, where we've been able to bring actors from the global South to talk directly with our institutions, with our political parties in the Congress, so that they bring their views of the situation there. No, but still, it's challenging. And yeah, we are doing this, trying to influence, advocating with our institutions, trying to build capacities with our organizations, member organizations, and yeah, trying to have a more balanced horizontal dialogue. And Jérôme, your turn. Thanks.
Muchas gracias. Thank you very much, Sandra. Well, I will begin to break the rule, and if you don't mind, I will speak in Spanish, because my Spanish is more fluent than my English, if you don't mind, and if you can translate, of course.
Yes, no worries, Jérôme. Let me just let people know. Yes, that's okay from Josue. So anybody
Okay.
who Yes, anybody who does not speak Spanish can now switch to the English channel and
Okay.
Josué will be translating.
And sorry for that.
Oh, that's okay.
Sí, para nosotros es, bueno, primero agradecer la invitación, ¿no? Sé que es muy informal, pero quería agradecer la invitación. Es la oportunidad también de tener este diálogo con Sandra y Zoe. Estamos tratando las redes europeas también de poder hacer un trabajo más colectivo. Es complicado porque por falta de capacidades, ¿no? No logramos siempre coordinar como lo quisiéramos. Eso quiero decir eso quizás al inicio, ¿no? Nuestras plataformas, nuestras redes, como todas las que existen globalmente, están afectadas también como nuestros miembros, ¿no? Y necesitamos entonces lidiar con eso. Primero, estas tensiones entre el corto plazo y responder a las necesidades de nuestras socias, de nuestros miembros, y a la vez tener esa reflexión más a mediano y largo plazo, ¿no? Y eso es algo no siempre fácil de manejar conjuntamente. Pero para dar algunas ideas de lo que estamos haciendo para influir en estos cambios, en estas transformaciones, digamos, por nuestra naturaleza, la necesidad de trabajar siempre afuera, pero también adentro, ¿no? Afuera estamos tratando de tener un trabajo de advocacy hacia nuestros donantes públicos más colectivo, con nuestros miembros, pero también con otras personas, otras organizaciones del ecosistema. Y creo que eso es una tendencia que necesitamos reforzar. O sea, el tema de ampliar alianzas en el momento en el que vivimos es crucial. No solo por falta de capacidades o disminución de nuestras capacidades, pero por también bueno, hacer masa crítica hacia los blancos que queremos, sobre los cuales queremos incidir. Para eso, bueno, el tema de la ayuda pública al desarrollo que está cuestionado como tal. Nosotros no hablamos de ayuda, sino hablamos de solidaridad internacional. Y ahí tenemos una pelea para, de alguna forma, salvaguardar este concepto, que es un poquito más allá quizás de la cooperación, pero que sí también engloba esta cooperación, enmarca esta cooperación. Eh, y creo que revisitar entonces la solidaridad internacional, reinventarla, es algo que estamos tratando de hacer con los elementos que tanto Sandra como Zoe colocaban. Efectivamente, el tema, por supuesto, y tú también, Alba, lo decía inicialmente, ¿no? De poder tener relaciones mucho más horizontales con nuestras socias, de poder empujar esta agenda de la localization o la ayuda, la ayuda así decidida localmente, de poder también distribuir tanto los recursos más equitativamente como las tomas de decisiones y las estrategias, de trabajar las estrategias colectivamente. Entonces, estamos tratando con nuestras socias, algunas ya han avanzado en este terreno, otras están como más a la expectativa o en reflexión, pero estamos tratando de empujar esta agenda, ¿no? La otra cosa que quizás es importante actualmente para nuestras socias es justamente poder eh, convivir este momento peculiar más colectivamente, ¿no? La baja de financiación, la restricción del espacio cívico, que está muy fuerte también en Europa, como en todo el mundo. Ah, es interesante con esta perspectiva leer el último informe del Foro Europeo Cívico, para darse cuenta de las tendencias dramáticas, ¿no?, que estamos viviendo. Entonces, todo este entorno hace que necesitamos como tener espacios de respaldo, de refuerzo mutuo, de ayuda mutua, de escucha, para poder liberar las ansiedades y reflexionar más colectivamente. Una cosa que a nosotros todavía nos falta, quizás como red francesa, es abrir estos espacios justamente a las organizaciones de la sociedad civil del sur. Lo hemos empezado, bueno, y tenemos la oportunidad del C7 ahora, donde muchos actores del sur están presentes y con los cuales co-construimos, pero creo que es algo que necesitamos reforzar. Y me voy a parar por el momento aquí.
Perfecto, muchísimas gracias, Jérôme. Thank you very much. I'm going to continue in English, but Jérôme, of course, feel free to continue in Spanish. If anybody's having any issues with the translation, you can please message Claudia or me. Just building actually on your last point, Jérôme, about the need for to build alliances and to amplify collaboration across networks. And I wanted to ask each of you what that collaboration looks like, particularly in your context in Europe, and do you feel that there is, also at this time when multilateralism is so clearly being threatened, do you feel that there is potential for collaboration across networks, and particularly thinking about the work that is being done to shift narratives in the global north? We were curious about what importance, if any, is being given to narratives around decolonization specifically, which, for example, I know in the case of Bond, that does have a pretty big focus, but sort of regionally, these efforts to shift narratives, are they occurring, and is there collaboration between networks? Again, whoever would like to go first. Yes, Sandra.
I go first, but maybe so we cut more to since it's been mentioned. No, I really think it's crucial that we work together in changing this narrative regarding the cooperation, international cooperation ecosystem and future. I'm not so sure we are doing it so much or as much as we should be doing it. We're, for example, from La Coordinadora, working very closely also in changing narratives and also in defending civic space with Forus. We are board members now of Forus, thanks to Coordinación Sud, who was very, very persuasive in that. So yeah, and this helps us as well to change the narrative with our members and at our national level, no, and to move to a more fairer and I don't know, to rethink how we are doing things as platform and as organizations, no, and to see cooperation as a means as well of changing or as a means of reparations of the debts that from the we have from the global north to the global south. No, so this is a way of doing it, and this exchange with Forus within Forus is also a great way of building together these narratives. No, and yeah, I think in this type of frameworks we can work a lot. We are trying as well more, I think narratives, we need to change them in terms of the institutions we are advocating to, but also we need to change the narratives of what is the cooperation, what is international cooperation, what is development, etc., with society in general, with people. And in this regard, we are from La Coordinadora, we are really trying to change things. We are testing some projects, pilot projects, or not so in terms of narratives. We are working a lot with our members in the defense of the cooperation and in the change of view of cooperation, especially now that it's under attack. And it is a, I wouldn't say it's super easy process, but it's been really interesting. We are also trying to find other allies, not only with the other platforms, but with other actors, not necessarily the natural actors, to change these narratives as well. And we are working a lot in narratives of hope, because we think this is going to connect as well better with people, and this is going to change as well the way they see cooperation, especially now that we are clearly under attack by some media and actors. And I would say for us clearly it's key to build these strong relations with other networks and actors to push for a different way of seeing cooperation. So maybe Jérôme, I don't know who's first, or Zoe.
It's okay for the translation. Yes, okay, thank you. Sí, sobre el tema de las narrativas, quizás compartir la experiencia que estamos viviendo nosotros de tratar de construir narrativas, como lo decía Sandra, para primero nuestra opinión pública. Nosotros partimos de la constatación que el trabajo de incidencia que hacíamos hacia el Parlamento, hacia las instituciones, perdón, llegaba a un callejón sin salida, ¿no? Y necesitábamos entonces reencantar la opinión pública con la solidaridad internacional, porque este tema cada vez más salía del debate. Este tema también era una de las preocupaciones menos fuertes dentro de la opinión pública. Entonces, hemos trabajado sobre, y eso fue también a raíz de los ataques de la ultraderecha, ¿no? Primero un poco en reacción, pero ahora mucho más en construcción de estas narrativas más positivas, más desde la esperanza de los retos comunes que tenemos en el planeta, y sí, también de la humanidad, tratando de romper con la instrumentalización y la politización de la solidaridad internacional, aunque también hemos hecho un trabajo con nuestros miembros para tener narrativas diferenciadas, tratando de no perder nuestros valores, y así un poco a veces estar en la línea, ¿cómo se dice? Le fil du rasoir, el razor edge, ¿no? Y a veces, bueno, sin querer caer en la ambigüedad, en función de los contextos en los cuales estamos y los interlocutores que estamos, ¿no? Entonces, eso es una parte. La otra cosa, entonces, para poder llegar a esta opinión pública, estamos construyendo una campaña que va a ser en 3 fases. Comparto eso también porque fue un trabajo a partir de estas narrativas, a partir del trabajo con investigadores de la opinión pública, de los trabajos de George Lakoff también, ¿no? Para enmarcar en nuestros mensajes. Y vamos a tener entonces una primera fase con un pequeño clip de 30 segundos que demoramos para construirlo colectivamente porque justamente había las líneas rojas, y queríamos que este videoclip se dirige hacia segmentos que habíamos identificado previamente como nuestros blancos. Electores indecisos, electores del centro derecha. Entonces, no es vamos a decir, necesariamente nuestros blancos o nuestros militantes, nuestros donantes, ¿no? Habituales. Y por eso demoramos también en poder construir este pequeño clip con una agencia de comunicación, lo hicimos. Esto va a salir pronto primero en los cines, porque logramos muchos espacios publicitarios para este pequeño videoclip y luego en las redes sociales. Eso va a ser una primera fase para, bueno, colocar, digamos, en los medios de forma masiva el mensaje que queremos colocar, que es un mensaje un poco distinto de lo que hubiéramos hecho. No voy a decir nada por el momento, pero está, y eso puede ser un poco disonante, ¿no? Pero es un mensaje que va a recolocar el orgullo francés. Y la idea de que la solidaridad internacional, la historia de Francia se construyó con la solidaridad internacional y estamos orgullosos de esta historia, ¿no? Eso es un primer momento. Luego vamos a tratar de eh, declinar, no sé, o sea, de multiplicar las voces a partir de nuestras organizaciones miembros. Cada uno va a poder escoger el hilo de este mensaje para poder hablar más libremente, digamos, con sus propias redes. Y luego queremos hacer un momento también de movilización en una tercera fase antes de las elecciones presidenciales que vamos a tener el próximo año. Entonces, bueno, eso para nosotros es totalmente nuevo y va a marcar también un momento distinto en nuestras narrativas, mucho más centradas en el diálogo intercultural, en la interdependencia, como decía, en la justicia global, pero también destacando estos valores que hacen nuestra identidad también como país. Y eso lo queremos conversar con las organizaciones de foros, justamente, ¿no? Presentamos algo de las narrativas de foros hace poco y queremos ver cómo pueden ser recibidas un poco estas narrativas para poder, bueno, cruzar justamente entre redes. Y queremos hablar con otras redes europeas para ver si podemos amplificar esto también hacia la Unión Europea. Me paro aquí también ahora.
Muchas gracias, Jérôme. Thank you. Zoe?
Yeah, I mean, similar to Sandra and Jérôme, we are doing work, and I suppose listening to both of them speak, there's a real opportunity for us to do more collaboration on that because there's a lot of similarities with all our countries and the rise of the far right and the challenges with those and perceptions and shifting narrative and all of those things. I mean, we're doing it in two ways. We are thinking around public support, so that there is a perception by our political parties that there isn't much public support for international development, but the data tells us something different. And so there's lots of data to say that people are more supportive. And when you actually ask them the questions in an intelligent way, they, rather than a yes and no answer, they are more supportive to international cooperation. So I think there's definitely work going on here by Bonn to try and communicate that to our MPs, our members of parliament, so that they know we're kind of supporting our members. Our members are all over the country. It's not just here in London. And we're trying to support our members to go out so they can talk to their members of parliament and say, no, this is important to me as well. So there's the work kind of around parliament, but then there's also the broader work around the general public, around shifting narratives. And I think there's a perception that international development, don't get me wrong, international development does need to change as we're all here, but there's a perception that we're not changing, and we're very old-fashioned, and perhaps all the things that we're talking about here today, the public don't see that. And so we are doing work around kind of working with the sector to explore the narrative about how we talk about the work we do, who we are, and the impact that we do. We want the work to evolve the public's perception, and so giving them the kind of the messages that cut through where traditional media no longer shapes and informs public opinion in the way that it used to. So we kind of want to give our members the tool to do that. And I think some of this is funding dependent, as everything is nowadays, but we're hoping to do more work and to see if there's something that we can do to collaborate the campaigns here in the UK, especially as the UK is going to be hosting G20 in the coming years. And so it's a real opportunity for us to build support here in the UK and kind of bang a drum a little bit. So definitely taking notes from what I've heard from colleagues here, Sandra and Jérôme, about what they're doing, thinking about how we could collaborate better and share.
That's great. Thank you everybody so much. That was actually really very insightful. I mean, from what you were saying at the beginning, it was clear that there is so much potential for collaboration, and that ultimately, while each platform is focused on their own context, that there's a lot of overlapping potential. Because we have 15 minutes left and we really wanted to give space also for everyone that has joined us today, we wanted to open the floor up to, I think, maybe 2 or 3 questions from the audience. Whether people want to raise their hands and ask the questions, you can do so in English or in Spanish, or whether you want to put them in the chat. I think it'll be best if we can hear the 3 questions at the same time, if that works for our speakers, and then answer them at the same time, so that we don't go back and forth. So if anybody has any questions for any of our speakers particularly, or a general question or a general comment that they would like to add, as long as we can keep them short and make sure that we have time to hear everybody and to hear again from our speakers, then please go ahead. You can raise your hand, you can unmute, or you can put them in the chat. Yes, Marta? Marta, did you want to ask a question?
It's a problem because I am in an area that the internet is not working that well. But one of the things that I need to raise is that, we are living at war. And it's become like, how do we survive? And I think that we got to do some thinking about thinking from the beginning that what we are working is so that all of us, present and future generations, can live not in pieces, but in peace. Because, I am from El Salvador, I am in Destierro, and it's very, very hard for the people there and for all of us and all these deportations. We got to, we got to be with the people that forever, ever have been left behind. And it's not that we don't know what to do. It's the very fact that we figure out how to survive, but we shouldn't be about survival. It's about dignity, justice, and not living in pieces. So for that, we have to prioritize the 2/3 of humanity that live in the conditions that I'm talking about. And then you have a country that's going and doing whatever it wants everywhere. And then they have situations that they have to transform in their own countries. And we are not prioritizing to force us to think how the global north stops doing to us and start being responsible for what they say. So we wouldn't really need solidarity if it wasn't that they keep messing with us. We are not even asking them to pay us back. Just leave us in peace. And we got to talk seriously, and we cannot continue to call ourselves as depending nations, least developed countries, all those kinds of words that they create to refer to us because they call themselves developed. And then we continue to use that language, and language is very key to affirm who we are and what we are for. The way we say it is the way we do it. The way we do it is very harmful to all of us. So I'm just saying, we have to figure out how not to depend on those foundations that, in order to be foundations, they have had to exploit us before and continue to exploit us now, don't pay any taxes, and then they confuse and lie to their people, saying that they are helpful and that they really are being very in solidarity. But to be in solidarity, they first have to have the need for that solidarity. So we are not being solidarious. So it might seem like I am rambling, but I'm not. And I'm going to write about this because, I don't want to depend on Soros. And then every time that something happens, Soros this and Soros that. No, we have always been about living in dignity and not in indignity. Okay, take care. Gracias.
Thank you, Marta. Thank you so much for your reflection. I see that we have Maria has her hand up, and then I've also seen one question in the chat. So Maria, if you want to ask your question, and then I'll read out the question from the chat. And if everybody's happy with that, then we can leave it there. Hear again from our speakers one more time, because we really want to make sure also that we respect everybody's time. Hola, María. Adelante.
Hola, gracias. ¿Se me oye? Sí.
Sí.
Vale. Bueno, la verdad es que es súper interesante de escuchar las tres coordinadoras, ¿no?, en estos tres países. Mi pregunta va muy... Bueno, había una pregunta que era, ¿no?, que hacía Alba de cómo se coordinaban entre ellas, estas tres coordinadoras. También creo muy interesante. Por la respuesta entiendo, pues es algo que todavía hay que hacer más, pero bueno, qué guay que se pueda ir hacia allá. Mi pregunta va más en otro tipo de redes internacionales, como Acápacá, por ejemplo, que tenemos aquí los Alba y todos los que han organizado, como el Ringo, etcétera. Cómo estas coordinadoras nacionales, en este caso, bueno, pues de UK, Francia y España, cómo se coordinan, por ejemplo, con estos... Yo estoy ahora también participando, ¿no?, en esta red internacional de Acápacá, en este caso más focalizada en Latinoamérica, cómo, por ejemplo, este nuevo paradigma que se está gestando desde... no es tanto Acápacá, sino este foro latinoamericano para encontrar otra manera, ¿no?, de trabajar la cooperación internacional, cómo todo esto está también permeando estas nuevas narrativas, todos estos esfuerzos que me parecen súper válidos que desde las diferentes coordinadoras se están haciendo. Es como que siento que igual no se ha llegado todavía a este nivel de coordinación que creo que sería muy interesante entre redes nacionales, pero también en estas redes internacionales que están avanzando mucho, ¿no? Entonces, no sé, era una pregunta en este sentido.
Perfecto, María, muchísimas gracias. Voy a leer la pregunta que tenemos de Mónica. I'm going to read out the question that we have from Mónica, which is, from your experience, which sectors or stakeholders can be unexpected allies in this new era? I think, Sandra, you were mentioning this earlier about looking for new allies in the sector. So again, from the three interventions that we've heard, if any of you want to take up any of the ones in a particular order, Zoe, I think, see you have your hand raised, so go ahead.
And I think this is probably similar, Sandra, to what you were talking about finding new allies, in particular around public support for us. We're really trying to align with and support other networks and other charities based here in the UK that work domestically for refugees, for climate change, because we can support them, and then we hope that in our time of need that they support us and raise up our issues in the sector. So we're trying to look outside our normal allies and the people that we work with, because I think what we're starting to see is that, in particular around kind of NGOs and how we operate here in the UK, is that we often like to think that we're different or we're special to charities that work domestically here in the UK, but actually the challenges are the same, and we work better if we support each other and we kind of allies with each other. So they're new ones for us, I would say.
So I don't know if it's Maria that still wants to say something, or it's my... No,
I think I think maybe Maria left her hand up, but I think it's your go, Sandra.
No, perdonen, se me quedó la mano levantada, ya está, ya está.
Está bien, nada. So, with regards to the first question or comment by Marta, I cannot agree more. What we can do, I'm thinking from the NGOs in the Global North and from the networks, and especially regarding these situations we are seeing also in Europe in terms of shrinking civic space, etc., is to push for, to try to support as much as possible civil society wherever these attacks are felt or are received, and we are doing this with our organizations. We've been trying to support and also pressing our institutions in the countries. I know it's not the answer, Marta, but it's what we can do for now in trying and we are trying to support and to protect this civic space for civil society in countries like Palestine, or in Palestine, where we've seen a terrible attack, a genocide actually, and in other countries we've been also working, trying to push also our institutions here to have a strong voice internationally. Also in El Salvador, in Nicaragua, etc., and other countries. And I know this is not exactly what you're asking for, but this is what we are doing. And also, certainly, we are pushing a lot and we are pressing a lot to stop the increase of funding of military expenditure, which is something that has been rising for the last 11 years. And we also hear from organizations in the Global North can push for that to change, no? And the money to be used, because in terms of cooperation, they say there is no money, there is all these restrictions for civil society funding, etc. But however, we see an increase, an amazing increase, amazing in the worst sense, increase in this military spending, which is translated into suffering and killings, etc. So I think this is something that we can do and that we are trying to do from the networks in the Global North, or at least from La Coordinadora. And with relation to what Marta was asking in terms of the cooperation with our international or global networks, aside from Forus, which is, I think, a very, very interesting forum in terms of, or space in terms of changing narratives, in terms of defending civic space. We are as well working with and we've been promoting from the very beginning in groups like the CELAC EU civil society group, and I think there's been interesting results and on that, like the bi-regional care pact, and it gives a lot of information and it fits a lot our narratives as well to work closely with these groups. So we are trying, and I see from from what Jérôme and Zoe are saying that there are means of coordination. We might be in Concord, we might be in Forest together, etc. But still, there is, for example, in narratives, we are doing the same things. Probably in very small different ways, but I think we could have a bigger impact, because this is the thing, this is what we're missing, a bigger impact on society, and institutions and political impact by working together. So we really need to rethink on how we do things. And unexpected allies. Well, certainly we're working with trade unions in changing narratives. We're working with environmental organizations. We're working, this could be, I would say, feminist organizations for sure. This could be like our natural allies. We are in institutional spaces, for example, La Coordinadora, to influence the cooperation policy with other actors. like the private sector, which is very tricky. So I don't know. It's something we need to reflect on if we want to get a wider support in the change of narratives, but this is really complicated. And we are not very much aligned. So I think for now, what we are doing is trying to push these alliances with similar-minded or rights approach organizations. Thank you.
Adelante, Jérôme.
Sí, tal vez para
2
completar.
minutitos que ya estamos terminando.
Para completar el tema de las alianzas, bueno, no sé si son unexpected, yo creo que ya muchas las estamos usando, pero nosotros hemos intentado mm, estrechar nuestros lazos con los investigadores y investigadoras, con el mundo académico. Tenemos un pequeño polo de prospectiva y de hecho, bueno, para los que pueden leer el francés, hay un estudio interesante que salió, hay dos estudios, uno el año pasado y otro ahora, uno el año pasado justamente sobre los cuestionamientos a la cooperación y solidaridad internacional y las pistas posibles y los cambios de posturas que se perfilan dentro del mundo de las ONG francesas o occidentales, y otra que está más focalizado sobre cómo construir una nueva solidaridad desde las organizaciones del sur a partir de distintas experiencias. Esa salió en marzo de este año. Entonces tratamos de acercarnos más a este mundo académico. También, como decía ahora Sandra, el mundo sindical y el mundo asociativo en su diversidad, porque al final estamos viviendo los mismos ataques, ¿no? A nivel global, europeo y nacional, el mundo de la cultura, el mundo de las asociaciones ambientalistas, por supuesto, de los migrantes, ¿no? Entonces estamos tratando de reforzar estos lazos con estos actores. Y también lo interesante es que hemos podido, por ejemplo, durante los 2 últimos años, reforzar también alianza o diálogo más estratégico con, por ejemplo, la Agencia Francesa de Desarrollo, porque a pesar de tener diferencias, tenemos intereses comunes. am, También con Forus hemos trabajado en una alianza con los bancos públicos de desarrollo, la alianza entre sociedades civiles y estos bancos, ¿no? Para ampliar el espacio de la sociedad civil dentro de las reflexiones y las actuaciones de estos bancos. Con algunos think tank también tratamos de ampliar alianzas y claro, está como pendiente también este mundo del sector privado con su diversidad, ¿no? Yo creo que nos acercamos, por ejemplo, a todo el mundo de la economía social y solidaria, con necesidad de dialogar más, pero el año pasado, por ejemplo, hubo el Foro Mundial en Burdeos y eso ha permitido estrechar algunos lazos, ¿no? A este nivel. Necesitamos a los niveles europeos, como decía María, y también a nivel más global, necesitamos sí tener más diálogos, pero hay que encontrar los espacios y las capacidades, los tiempos, ¿no? Vemos que es estratégico en este momento y por eso también estos espacios que ofrecen Forus, Acápacá, el foro, o sea, son importantes. Habría que encontrar equivalentes en el mundo africano, quizás. que hay muchos, o asiáticos, ¿no? Que hay muchos pensadores, hay mucha sociedad civil también viva que reflexiona y que cuestiona. Ah, y la última cosa que es interesante, estamos entrando en diálogo con el mundo filantrópico, ¿no? La filantropía en los países anglosajones es distinta de Europa del Sur y vemos que hay un potencial ahí con algunas fundaciones, no todas por supuesto, para defender más bueno, la democracia, el espacio cívico, los derechos humanos, que no son temas que todavía están mucho en la agenda de estas fundaciones. Entonces hay un trabajo ahí de explicación y de advocacia también a hacer.
Perfecto. Muchísimas gracias, Jérôme. Thank you very much. And yes, thank you, everyone. Zoe had to leave, unfortunately, because she had a different meeting just now at 5. I just wanted to wrap up very quickly. I mean, this has been a super interesting conversation. And I think something that's really come up is the kind of balance that I think a lot of people are doing right now in the sector or are navigating right now in the sector between defending cooperation, but also being critical of the cooperation system. And I think that especially we're seeing discourses from the right that attack cooperation. And so we have the need to defend it, but we also have the need to critique it at the same time. And so I think navigating that equilibrium is where a lot of the things that we've mentioned come up today. Definitely something else that has come up is the importance and the need of centering civil society in decision making, but also in building the narratives around development and cooperation. And these narratives sometimes they're going to be complex, and they need to dialogue with that complexity also. And definitely the need to amplify collaboration across all of these networks and to build alliances, because a lot of this work is taking place, a lot of these conversations are taking place, and there is a lot of potential for this work to really come together and to be a stronger force. And I wanted to finish, yes, just bringing what Marta brought in her intervention around solidarity, because we were talking so much about building narratives around solidarity and what solidarity is. And I think Marta was very clear that solidarity is about dignity and about justice. And I think that we should not forget that, and that should be at the center of all the work that we're doing. So yeah, I just wanted to thank you all for your time. I don't want to take any more time. But yes, I mean, a big part of the work that we do is about ensuring that we can create these collective spaces for critical reflection and to start to generate and to build on new narratives around international cooperation. I think Claudia has sent in the chat some links if any of you didn't know or would like to connect. And yes, definitely thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Sandra.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
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 Bye.